Shabbat shalom, everybody. I'm starting 20 seconds early today, but I just couldn't wait. I was sitting here like, it was like microwave time waiting for the last minute. And I'm just like, you know what? For the people here who are early, welcome, everybody. And of course, before we get too far into this, all praise to our Heavenly Father and, of course, his son, Yahushua HaMashiach. I was just thinking about the Father of spirits, our Father in heaven, and how in the very beginning he created all spirits. You and me, we were all there at the beginning. And then just thinking about how Yahweh, or Yahweh, if you prefer, or Yahweh, he creates Adam, he breathes into him the breath of life, and how this breath has passed down to each one of us, and how right now we are conscious and we are living and we get to experience this life. And how exciting is it going to be? I mean, I think that assuming, of course, we have lived a righteous life, that we are not wicked, and when we take our last breath and we passed into the other side, when we pass that spiritual curtain, and we're able to look back at our life, and I think we're going to look at all the pain and the sorrow that we went through, and we're going to finally understand, I think truly understand how that was intended. There's this mixed, all the feelings and emotions, the good ones and the ones we call bad, mixed together to create joy, just the joy of being alive, and the greatest gift that we've been given. Of course, salvation is the greatest gift, right? But the gift that we have been given to actually be conscious and to live. So praise our Heavenly Father for that. Let's get right into this tonight. Week 42 of Numbers, chapter 30. I think this is, for a lot of the Torah portions, crowds, this is a double portion. I'm doing a single portion. The good news is I think I'm 1 week ahead of everyone else, so the others will catch up most likely. I looked at the double portion. I'm like, nah, I'm just going to do a single portion today. The thing about finish, I don't know if I'm going to finish or cross the finish line the same time as all the other Torah portions group, but the thing is, it's about crossing that finish line, right? That's the whole point. So it doesn't matter if you're first or second or third. We're going to cross it together. Thank you, everybody who has been coming in week after week and making this a tradition in your home. And it means a lot to me, but it means a lot to Pamela as well. And all the work she is putting into these translations. She has been just slaving away. And I learned this week, I did not know this, that Pamela actually, she translates all this on paper, like 1990 style. This is awesome. So, I mean, as a writer myself, I can appreciate that. And I take a lot of notes on paper. It's a very different thinking process, but she just has these notebooks where she translates it all, and then she's got to type it up afterwards. And so good news is she is finished with Deuteronomy. She is in the typing process, the very end of it. And I hear the news is that she is also done with Song of Solomon. So, or I should say Song of Songs, more precisely, Song of Songs. So from the Paleo Hebrew. So that's something to look forward to when we get through Deuteronomy. The finish line is before us. We could see it. We got one more book of the Bible left, Deuteronomy, finish the Torah portions. And when we do the new cycle, we're going to do a double back-to-back, and we'll start doing Song of Songs, something to look forward to in September, October timeline, whenever it is. All right. So last week review, we compared the zealousness of Phinehas with Yahusha at the temple. And of course, if you don't know who Phinehas is, and you clearly haven't been here the last 3 weeks, as I keep talking about him, and he was the dude that went and stuck a spear. He made a kebab out of the Midianitish woman, the priestess, and the leader of the tribe of Reuben, and he walked around camp with them. We see the same, and it actually said the zeal within Yahushua when he overturned the tables. It was a Phinehas moment. We saw that I showed you that zeal, the thing about zeal, and people say, oh, he's overzealous, or he's too zealous, or that kind of stuff. That was a problem with the Pharisees. They were so zealous. I'll actually know that the thing is about zeal is that it must be accompanied with knowledge. Okay, without knowledge, zealousness is just, what's the point, right? So you want to actually have a zeal for the knowledge and not just zeal for the sake of having zeal. Or also leads to destruction. We looked at, as per Romans 10, Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. That's one of my favorites. A lack of knowledge leads to destruction, for they have forsaken my Torah. Hebrews chapter 4, chapter 10, and then 2 Kepha chapter 3. That's the big popular one with those who are twisting Paul's words. And what I love about that passage, he says these same people who twist Paul's words to say something it doesn't say are the ones twisting the scriptures to say something it's not saying, and it leads to destruction. Whenever you do a study on knowledge and destruction throughout scripture, knowledge lines up with the Torah. Destruction is being disobedient to the Torah. So there's no new definitions there in 2 Kepha. We looked at the death of Balaam at the hands of Phinehas. In fact, I think for the last 3 weeks, we've been looking at that. And again, in this Torah portion, it talks about the death of Balaam at the hands of Phinehas. So no more commentary is needed on that. I'm just going to read through that. We've covered that enough. Interestingly enough, I showed you the Simon Levite and Reuben prophecy. And I'm sorry, it wasn't the tribe of Reuben, it was the tribe of Simon. So my apologies. When the man who was killed was Simon, the Reubenites were the ones who teamed up with Korah. So I'm already in a headspin here. The Simon Levite prophecy began with the rape of Dinah at Shechem. And that was the incident where they went in and, circumcised a bunch of dudes and then took the sword to them when they were rolling around in pain on the floor in the heat of the day. And then in chapter later on, Yaakov, he prophesizes that the two would no longer work together. He actually doesn't bless Simon, to my knowledge. And so we see that manifested in Numbers with Phinehas killing the leader of Simeon. And then, of course, Simeon, the tribe, kind of drifts off in history, whereas Levi stays around. We saw that there was a decrease in number of Simeon's tribe of 37,100 people, I guess men. And from where the number starts in the beginning of Numbers and then where it is at the end of Numbers. So we're talking 40 years wandering, and there's a huge decrease in population. There should be an increase. This is not how reproductive activity works generally. And so it seemed like a lot of the people who were killed off in the Moabites prostitute Balaam situation were the tribe of Simeon. It seems like the leader of Simeon was leading his people into that act. Then we saw it also Simeon's prophecy of Mashiach coming from Yehuda and also being a high priest like a Levite in the testament of Shimon or Simeon. We saw that Simeon beheld Yehusha as a baby in Luke chapter 2, which I had stated was perhaps a fulfillment of that prophecy, actually in the 12 patriarchs. Phinehas and Eliyahu are both believed to be the same person, with Phinehas being still alive at the end of Judges. So Eliyahu would be Elijah. So the idea is that Phinehas and Elijah are literally the same person. I've shown you at least many people in history. Some people get kind of, is it crude to say this? Some people get their knickers in a twist when I talk about stuff like this. I'm just showing you that throughout history, this was an open conversation within rabbinical, Jewish, even Christian communities where they're talking about this. They're getting together on Sabbath to say, what do you think about Phinehas and Elijah being the same person? And they're like, let's look at scripture and figure that one out. Of course, Eliyahu, Elijah, I showed you where he was prophesied to return, multiple texts. And also I did a reading on the apocalypse of Eliyahu, Elijah, which I really like that book. And I need to do a more in-depth study on it in terms of the timeline and so on and so forth, what I think is going on there. I'm still not completely certain where it should fall in the timeline, whether it should be 70 AD or I think it's more likely, 500 years out. Then, of course, I also showed the theory out there that Elijah or Eliyahu and Yochanan the Baptizer are the same person, and including a quote from Yahushua HaMashiach. Then I ended it with the cherry on top, the icing on top of the conversation, talking about the Yahusha, Moshe, Eliyahu, and time travel connection in Scripture. I'm not giving you details on that now. You have to go back and watch that for yourself. Now, something I wanted to start on tonight. I think this is, I can't state this enough, and I'll probably spend the rest of my career talking about this, unless if I change my opinion to see the Bible in a new light. I wanted to talk about controlled opposition in the little season, or you could say that the centuries that we find ourselves now. And this was a question that was proposed to me by an amazing ministry partner for us, and she's a woman. I've answered many of her questions before publicly, so I hope she's listening to this. And she doesn't mind. She likes it when I answer them publicly. And this is what she said in a question. She asked me this to address this private question. I struggle with a lot of things, and your perspectives have helped. I am learning to think and push myself in ways I never have. I try to understand, but sometimes I am more confused. Which, if I am confusing people, that is not what I want to do. It brings me sorrow to think that I might be putting things out there that, confuse people. For me, it's I have all these things going on in my head. I'm in my own, kingdom verse, and I know for a lot of the people out there, you're subscribing to 30, 40, 50 other channels, and you're just looking at all these other ministries. They're all saying these different things. They don't always connect. They don't always agree. And so you're kind of tapping in and out of what I'm saying. And you're like, okay, this is a little confusing. How does this connect? For me, it all connects, but I don't want to seed any confusion with anybody. And so she goes on to say the divine feminine and sleeping beauty, and that it should say poo, not pooped. I wrote that, so it's my spelling error. But the divine feminine, sleeping beauty, and poo, etc., was hard because I am not sure where to place it. Are bad people telling us stuff their way, or sneaking truth in their own understanding? Which I'm just going to say right there. She actually answers the question there at the end. So let me read you this quote from C.S. Lewis. I'm not apologizing for reading C.S. Lewis to you guys. I know there's somebody out there rolling their eyes right now, but this is a really good. This is a good quote. And this is what he says: if you are a Christian, you do not have to believe that all other religions are simply wrong all through. Preach it, Lewis. I agree with this. If you are an atheist, you do have to believe that the main point in all the religions of the world is simply one huge mistake. Now, this is coming from the mind. C.S. Lewis is one of those guys. He gets so heavily criticized, but he's one of those guys who just wears his emotions on his sleeves. He's very transparent. This is a guy who used to be a diehard atheist against Christianity, against all world religions, comes back around very humble by this, going like, I was wrong. Man, I was so wrong about this. So here he is criticizing atheists because he used to be one of them, saying that atheists have to say that the entire point of all religions are all wrong on everything. All religions, not just Christianity, which tells you that there is a core element in all religions, that there's something sparking that desire to, seek a higher spiritual truth. If you are a Christian, you are free to think that all these religions, even the queerest ones, contain at least some hint of truth. That's 100% true. I'm going to go through that tonight. That'd be the point of this opening. When I was an atheist, I had to try to persuade myself that most of the human race have always been wrong about the question that mattered to them most. When I became a Christian, I was able to take a more liberal view. But of course, being a Christian does not mean thinking that where Christianity differs from other religions, Christianity is right and they are wrong. It does mean. Now, I put this in blue for a reason. Let me just say the sentence again, what Lewis is saying. Being a Christian does mean thinking that where Christianity differs from other religions, Christianity is right and they are wrong. As in arithmetic, there's only one right answer to a sum, and all other answers are wrong. But some of the wrong answers are much nearer being right than others. Now, the reason I put that in blue there is because I agree with that statement and I disagree. The reason I agree is because I believe that Yahweh, that's the Paleo-Hebrew, if you're just tuning into the channel, that is the Paleo-Hebrew name for Yahweh, or Yahuwah or Yahweh, however you want to pronounce Yahuwah, that he is the witness to the truth. He has been with the Father. He's seen the Father. I believe that he is Yahushua HaMashiach. Yahushua HaMashiach learned everything everything he said. He heard from the Father. Everything he did, he learned from the Father. He has dispensed truth, and his testimony is true. Scripture is true. So in that sense, I agree that his testimony is the truth. And we get that through the Torah. This is why we're going through the Torah portions, because Yahweh is giving his instructions in righteous living to humanity, to anyone who wants to be in a covenant with him. Where I disagree with this. And I think Lewis would, I think if I were to sit down with Lewis and I would ask him to clarify this, I think he and I would agree on this point based on what he's already said, that that we can't use this as an excuse to go, whatever I believe of Christianity is true, that means they're wrong. Well, wait a second. What if you're wrong about what the Bible actually states? See, that's a whole different issue right there, because we go through our whole lives being wrong about doctrine. And maybe, just maybe, there are other beliefs out there that aren't even in Christianity that actually have it right. They're actually of a more biblical perspective than we are. Now, that's going to be like a what for some people out there, but it's taken me a long time to appreciate that. Now, let's look at some examples here. Religious similarities. I call this the religious similarities starter pack. Now, the creation of the world, mankind's removal from paradise. We see the creation of the world, the Adam and Eve scenario, all over the world. All different cultures talk about this. I don't even need to go into that. One of the big things for the people in this community is ancient cosmology, what we call biblical cosmology. You call it Hebrew cosmology. You call it flat Earth, geocentric, whatever, cosmology, whatever you want to call it. Just let's go with ancient cosmology. The thing is that because I myself believe that the Earth is motionless and flat. By flat, I mean that the water, the level, the surface of water is level. It always finds its level. Therefore, the bulk of this world is flat. Yes, Colorado's not flat, but the Earth is flat. Florida's flat. Kansas is flatter than a pancake, and Florida is actually flatter than Kansas, which is a huge embarrassment when you look at the water on all sides, right? The curve of the Earth, whatever. Not going down that route. I've had many people in the religious Christian community come forward and say, well, the Babylonians and the Egyptians believed in a flat Earth. So that and that proves that's a pagan view. That's pagan. You shouldn't believe that. I'm like, are you serious? Like what I'm going to show you example after example is that it only makes sense that you're going to see commonalities in all these other religions. Think about this. Who came off the ark? Noah and his 3 sons. His 3 sons had his father's religion. They went over all the earth, and Ham was a bad guy, and we don't really know that much about Japheth, but they perverted the religion. But we're going to see similarities all over. And all the ancients agreed that the earth was under a solid firmament that was flat, motionless. All right. So yes, the pagans believe that, and that's okay. That there's a commonality we have that I would agree with the pagans, the ancient pagans. Yes, that is a true statement. Here's another one right here. Now this is the goddess Nut, the Egyptian one. You can see here she's the firmament. You can see the stars there in her. She's a body of water above. And the Egyptians believe that the firmament was an actual divine being. And a lot of you will be like, what? Well, I mean, that's what the Bible says. It says this in 2nd Baruch. It says that the firmament was a ruach. And in 2nd Ezra, it says the same thing. The ruach of the firmament. The firmament is a living, conscious, spiritual being. Crazy to think about. So the Egyptians understood that. Now, that doesn't mean that they got it right, but that is a truth. They say that, look, the firmament is a living creature and spiritual being. I agree with that. I could find that in scripture. Here's another big one. The sun and the moon as divine beings in a celestial chariot, boy and a girl. And immediately people are like, that's sun worship, that's moon worship. It's like, well, okay, I can show you several scriptural texts that talk about that the moon is feminine, a woman, a divine being, conscious, and and the sun is as well. And I'm not going to that study tonight because I don't have time, but I do have plenty of studies on that. And so when you see the Greeks and the Romans and others talking about that, it's because it's based off of a truth of how our universe actually functions, our cosmology. Of course, you're at the unexpected cosmology, right? So you should expect the unexpected here. The seven-headed Leviathan. I've done studies on how we see the seven-headed Leviathan starting out in Genesis, ends in Revelation with the seven-headed beast. Same thing. It's Leviathan. But here's the Baal. You can see the Baal cycle. I'm not going on a study on this, but you see the Canaanites, Sumerians talking about the same thing, and you see passages about the slaying of Leviathan, and you see it in, what is it, Isaiah? You see it in the scripture too. So are we to say that this is pagan? We're not to believe in Leviathan either because the pagans did? Here's another great one: the Anunnaki, the Titans, the Igigi/Watcher incursion. You can look all over the world and you could see that the incursion is talked about all over the world. And the unique thing about the book of Enoch is that it is, and of course we have we have Jubilees, we have others that talk about this incursion. But the great thing about the book of Enoch is that it's the only book that I can find where it flips the narrative on its head and it exposes them as wicked. Because in all the other books that I've been looking at so far, they treat them as, your typical God fare, and to be honored. And the book of Enoch's like, no, they were wicked for what they did. It exposes it. Now, I've heard people saying Enoch needs to be thrown out because of this issue. They so don't like the Watchers issue. They say that's fake. It's not real. They were just ripping off the Babylonians, and it's pagan. See what I'm saying? So let's keep looking. Here's a big one. The deluge myth. I think I might have written a myth in here. Yep, the deluge myth. Don't you love that? They call it the deluge myth. And they will say the deluge myth is told by basically every ancient culture everywhere on the motionless plane. They don't say the motionless plane. You guys know what I mean. Everywhere on the globe. It's like a foreign language for me. I have to translate spinning globe. That some people believe that. Can you believe it? 2024, some people still believe we live on a spinning globe. But this is, again, now, all those people who point out the young earth creation stuff, they're like, oh, see, it's proof. All these other religions talk about it. It's like, yeah, but those are pagan. Does that mean that the flood, the flood wasn't a universal flood? It was really a local flood, Babylonian local flood, because look at all these others. It's clearly pagan, right? No. It's okay. Yeah. Yes, the other religions believe this because it's true, because there's truth to it. Okay, well, let's keep looking. Here's another great one: the Tower of Babel and confusion of tongues. I mean, that makes more sense to me than anything else. The confusion of tongues makes so much sense. But I just gave a presentation on the Anunnaki a couple weeks ago. Sumerian text. The Babylonians were really big on the Tower of Babel. I mean, they talked about it like it really happened. It was a legitimate event. For them, it was like they talked about the Tower of Babel like we talked about 9/11. It was a big event. Oh, here's one that what I'm about to talk about like just trips people up. This turns people into atheists because they've been so sheltered their whole lives. They believe that Jesus is the only one that ever went down to hell. Yes, I just said hell instead of Sheol for a reason. He's the only one that ever went to hell and resurrected, and nobody else did. And then they start reading about these other pagan gods and going all the way back to Isis, Semiramis. You have Hercules, but all these stories of these different gods that went down to the underworld and came back to bring somebody back. Now, we could all discuss it and have a debate on that, but it's when it was introduced in Judaism in the first century. I don't even want to say Christianity, because Christianity was a later term that came along. They were all everyone who believed in Messiah back then, they were in the Jewish faith. When it was first introduced in Judaism that Mashiach had actually risen from Sheol, he came out of the grave on the third day. His body never saw corruption. That was not a new concept in the world at all. There are the mystery cults all over the world. They were all saying, yeah, we've been saying that for like thousands of years. We've been saying that for hundreds of years. So welcome to the club. All right. Yeah. So, I mean, here we have, of course, Hercules coming out of the underworld there. And this is a famous one here, the rape of Persephone, daughter of Zeus and Demeter by Hades. She's taken down, and this is the story of why we have the seasons, because she has to return every winter. And then she comes back for the spring for harvest, and she has to go back again. And I'm not commenting on those. I'm not saying whether they really happen or not. I'm just saying that we see. So do we throw? And this is what happens when I've seen this happen in real time, where people are like, everything is pagan, and if we find something that's pagan in the Bible, we have to remove it. And people are like, OMG. I've seen people walk away from the faith because of this issue. I've seen people walk away because they're like, what? Jesus wasn't the first to go down to shoot. Oh, that's it. I'm done. I'm done. Because Bacchus and all these other people. It's like, okay, I'm done. Okay, so here's another. Let's see, what are we looking at here? Oh, yeah, here's a great one. The divine council, the pantheon of gods, Elohim, all over the world. You see it in Germanic cultures, Greek, Roman, everywhere, right? Yeah, these pantheon of gods up there. And so when you start looking in scripture and you start saying, what, there's a divine council? There's actually a council of gods up in the heavens. And then I hear Christians say, oh, that's pagan. No, that can't be true, because it's pagan. That's what the Greeks believed, right? So, okay, we got that right there. Oh, and now let's get into poo, right? If you saw my Winnie the Pooh presentation, I talked about a lot of things. But I pointed out the idea of honey being divine. And that seems to be the case in scripture, the land flowing with milk and honey. The honey itself, it was flowing. It was not being farmed. They were talking about actual flowing honey, which is a sign of the blessing of the gods. And I went into that in that study. And there's a cute little picture of Pooh there with the bees. This is when it gets a little bit more sticky. This is where it really hits the fan. When you talk about wisdom, Chokmah, the feminine Ruach HaKodesh, the mother of Yahshua. And I will point out, people are like, no, there is no mother of Israel. That's pagan. Well, it actually says that in Sirach. It says the wisdom, Chokmah, is the mother. She is the mother of Israel. So according to that book, there is a mother of Israel. It is wisdom. It is Chokmah. It is one of the 7 spirits of Allah of God. It says that in Isaiah. One of the 7 spirits is Chokmah, wisdom. A conscious divine being. So we can all argue whether wisdom is the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. I believe she is, but Israel does have a mother, and it's wisdom. So we have the feminine divine in scripture. As far as I'm concerned, it's undeniable. And again, we could argue whether it's the Holy Spirit, but the undeniable fact is that there is a divine feminine spirit that is the mother of Israel, that Israel is her inheritance, wisdom. So you look all over the world and you're seeing, here's, of course, the rape of Persephone again to her uncle Pluto, Hades, wonderful individual. It's always the uncle. I mean, I don't mean to be like make a joke of this, but it really is, right? But it's almost always the uncle. And then you see Winnie the Pooh here, where this is, if you recognize those illustrations, that's from, I pointed out that Kanga is representative of the feminine divine. Not a question in my mind about that. And this is the Eleusinian mysteries, the rape of Persephone being played out in Winnie the Pooh. And so let me look a little bit more here. So here is an interesting illustration of the Trinity, and there is feminine Ruach HaKodesh. So you see that other people and the ancients did advocate that. And I actually believe that the actual MK medieval architecture was purely dripping with the feminine divine. Like, you can't hide it anymore. They may have scrubbed that from history, but it's in the architecture. It's in stone. It's written in stone. This is kind of interesting perspective here. Yes, they have the crescent moon, which, is apparently like, Ashtoreth or Astarte. If I pronounce her name right, I'm live and I embarrass myself sometimes. But this is interesting because she has like seraphims. Whoever did this illustration, I don't know. They made them out like she was a seraphim. It's just kind of interesting. But then, you get into there's Semiramis, there's Isis, there is the Queen of Heaven, right? So, dun, dun, dun. And then, of course, I actually saw the statue in the Louvre of Aphrodite. And saw that in the Louvre in person. And so the thing is what I want. Oh yeah, here's my conclusion. Well, no, let's talk a little bit more. So the one of the questions that came up is, I'm talking about Sleeping Beauty. And as I pointed out in my and the feminine divine. And who are the storytellers telling this? Well, what I actually pointed out in my presentation on this is that the fairy tale itself is it's not the same thing as mythology. It's much more fluid. It's a fairy tale is basically it's built up by inner experiences which do not quite fit the representations collectives. Does that make sense to you? That is to say, fairy tales are mostly unsophisticated products of the unconscious, telling us more about the dream state than other storytelling methods. So a fairy tale is a dream. Okay, it could be lucid, right? Think about all your dreams. Your dreams are pagan. Let's be honest. Your dreams are pagan, all right? But if you were to take your dreams and you were to, like you're saying, these are messages that are coming from the other realm, the higher realm, and you put these down into a story, and people are like, what? Anyways, my point is that you're going to see, if hopefully you guys got the first point, that the mysteries of heaven has been kind of disassimilated, so to speak, and everybody, all these different cults, all these different religions are trying to hold monopoly on it. And I believe that Yahuwah is trustworthy and true, and his witness is true. That's why I'm here. I wouldn't be if I didn't believe that. I'm not a universalist, but I believe that that he is trustworthy. But you're going to, just because other cultures talk about things doesn't make it untrue. Okay. And secondly, we have controlled opposition. Now, I'll give you a quick story here, and I think you guys will appreciate this. My wife and I, in our travels, we have become friends with another family that is also a full-time traveling family. In fact, we're going to be taking a big trip with them next year. And they met me back during Ed about 4 years ago, and they were just normies back then. I mean, they not woke normies, and they found out that I believe the earth was flat, and they got so angry at me. They were so upset. They were like, "Who is this freak of nature?" And he said he was angry for well over a year, and he just couldn't stop thinking about it. And finally, about a year and a half ago, he went out to disprove me. He took his sons out and his daughter, and he said, let's go out and disprove this guy Noel with his YouTube channel. Let's go disprove this, because they were listening to some of my stuff. And let's go disprove him. They went out to disprove the flat earth, and they walked away, and they're like, oh no, the earth is flat. And he became one of the biggest champions of the flat. I mean, he's totally flat earth now. Not only that, I have watched in the last year and a half, he has just taken, you know how it is when you discover the earth is flat, eat, sleep, poop, flat earth, and you just research and you research. This guy is just, red pill steroids, right? Just woken up to everything. But here's the thing. He and his wife, they grew up Roman Catholic. They were deep in Roman Catholicism. Now, they were true Roman Catholics in the sense that they never read the Bible. In fact, he confessed to me. He's like, he told me last December. I sat down, I was around a fire with him, and he said, to be honest, I don't even know what's in the Bible. I don't know anything that's in the Bible. And I said, I really appreciate your honesty. At least you can confess that. But he doesn't want anything to do with the Bible. And he said he doesn't get it. He's like, how he's like, Noel, how are you so woke? Like, how are you so alert to the way the world is, and you still believe in the Bible? He's like, don't you understand that Rome is running the world? I'm like, dude, I know Rome is running the world. That's the thing. See, this is controlled opposition right here. You had the Pope of Rome holding up the Bible, right? And so I'm just asking him, I'm like, just give it a chance. Like, you try to disprove me these others. Just give this a chance. Just believe me when I tell you that, that the people who are running the world are going to want to take the truth and hold it closest to their bosom. You don't want to throw out, you don't want the fallacy of throwing out the entire Bible just because the Pope is using it as a weapon. So, and that, that trips a lot of people up. So hopefully that explains my process of my mind. Just because there are people in high places that have an idea, they are monopolizing it, doesn't make the idea wrong. It doesn't. It could be because they are trying to discredit. It could be because they're trying to control the narrative. So they have to have it close in order to steer people in a certain way. All right. So hopefully you guys all understood that. Let's keep looking at tonight's program, Night Moves. Now, I gave this presentation a few months ago, but something that really sparked my interest last week, and I didn't even see it when I was studying it. When I read last week our Torah portion, I was kicking myself. I was like, I can't believe that I missed this. And this is in Pamela's translation in Numbers 29. It said, and on the 15th day of the seven Kadash shall exist to you a Matkara Kudash, a set-apart calling together. Now, this is talking about Sukkot. You shall fashion no prescribed work of service. You shall observe a pilgrimage festival, leaping, dancing, and she put there in a circle, being giddy unto Yahuwah the ever living for 7 days. And when I saw that, I'm like, Pamela, you're amazing, right? I could kiss you. This is amazing. And so you guys know that I did this whole thing on what I believe that, of course, the millennial kingdom, my timeline, I'm going to give a better presentation, I think, this Tuesday to kind of go over a lot of the details, because I think a lot of people there's so much, different voices out there just kind of saying stuff, and I feel that I have a lot of research on this to show why I've come, because of scripture, because it's what these books are saying. So, and it just lines up. It makes sense. Interesting enough, there was a dance called the Carol in the Middle Ages, which was worldwide popular. I mean, it goes all the way across the Black Sea, down into the Middle East, and all through Europe, France, England, Ireland, all over. And we know that people were doing it all over. Interestingly enough, the first description we get of it is not until the Renaissance in Italy. And what makes it worse is that you can just see, this is the Wikipedia article, no surviving lyrics or music for the carol have been identified. Say what? How in the world do you have a worldwide sensation and there is nothing on record? There is not one lyric sheet anywhere. There's no notes written down anywhere. And that for me is a huge red flag. This was scrubbed. They completely scrubbed this. And why? The question is why? Now, I'm not going to get into the maypole tonight, talking about paganism, right? I'm not going to get into the maypole tonight. I did a presentation on that. It's similar to the carol, the circle dance. But here are some of the only medieval illustrations that have survived. And we see people dancing with tambourines, other things, in a circle. We see actually knights dancing with the ladies. And what's interesting about the carol is that you see people from all different classes. You see peasants. You see in a circle. It's almost like maybe this is where they got the idea later on for the round table of King Arthur, where when you're sitting in the round table, everyone is an equal. It doesn't matter where you were. It's the idea of, all men are created equal, where we get it from in this country, from this idea of King Arthur's round table. And when they were in the carol, it didn't matter whether you were a king or a peasant. It doesn't matter who you were all equal in the circle. That seems to be the kind of idea being put forward. And there's even illustrations where you see people dancing with angels. I find that really interesting. And people can argue like, oh, no, come on, they weren't really dancing with angels. Well, I don't know if they were or they weren't. But I can tell you that it seems like on their consciousness, there was like, even if it was subconscious, there was idea that there was something very, very, whatever was happening on the earth was connecting with what was in heaven, what was going on in heaven. This looks like a hidden wilderness theme, the blessed land, the land, the undying land, where you have saints, you have kings and queens dancing with angels resurrected. Very interesting scene. This is my favorite illustration right here. I just love this one. And it appears that it's tying up with the zodiac. There's somehow that this circle dance, this carol, lines up with the zodiac. And then there's this one here, which is just simply beautiful, of the manger scene. And there is a carol happening above the manger scene. And I also might I add that here we actually see feminine angels, something you rarely ever see in artwork. And I do believe that there are masculine and feminine angels. One of the reasons, or spiritual beings, one of the reasons I've stated that you don't see them much make appearances, because heaven is a patriarchal society in which the men go forward to hunt, to go to war, to go on errands. The women are, doing their duties back home. And, so they're not going to be coming down to earth on missions very often. But I do think they exist. And there you see them dancing around happy at the birth of Mashiach. This one seems to be like a wedding scene here, but you see the carol being performed. You see a royalty with kind of more peasant people in there. So it's a cool illustration as well. So Anyways, I'm not going to go through all this research tonight. I did, yeah. Well, I'll go ahead and quote this. This comes from the French poet Christian de Troyes. He says, maidens performed rounds, or the carolint, and other dances, each trying to outdo the other and showing their joy. So there's a connection right there with Sukkot, the circle dance. That it was, and that's the thing about Sukkot, right? It's all about showing joy, right? You don't go there to be bitter, to gossip, to slander, to whatever. You go there and you praise Yah, you show joy, and everyone's trying to outdo each other in their joyfulness. That's kind of a very pleasant thought, something we don't get in our culture anymore. And here's another one where you see some others were playing at childhood games, rounds, dances, and reels, singing, tumbling, and leaping. And this is a scene between ladies and knights, and talking about how in this sense, it was their reminiscence of childhood, that this circle dance was the joy attributed with childhood and that kind of innocence. And I have commentary on that, but you can go back and you could read that for yourself. And the story of Percival, the story of the Grail, which I actually have a whole paper on that. I haven't had the nerve to give it to you guys yet. It's pretty epic. I wrote it a few months ago, and maybe one day I'll get the nerve to go public with it. You can read it on my website. Here's an instance here of King David dancing before the ark. And I asked the question, was it similar to the carol? Because if you can make the connection, as we can now with Sukkot and the circle dance, maybe he was dancing around it in a circle. I don't really know. But coming out of the medieval era, this mysterious circle dance, even though it was been scrubbed, you see cultures all over Europe, through the Balkans, Black Sea region, Turkey, all over. Even the Yiddish people, they all have this circle dance. This picture here on the top is a wedding, a Jewish wedding. You can see the yarmulke on the guy's head, and I can, I've never been, I used to be a wedding photographer, and I saw similar things at a Greek wedding where they were doing similar dances. So Yiddish, Slavic, Russian, Greek, Bulgarian, it just goes on and on. Ashkenazi, Balkans, they all have this dance. And we even see it on this, I love this tombstone where this, I guess, I don't know if it was a party or a funeral or what. Apparently this lady, this person really liked the carol because it ended up on the tombstone. Something to remember her by. And that was in Bosnia, interestingly enough. All right. Next order of business tonight. Oh, yeah, let's go ahead and read tonight's portion. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And I was kicking myself for missing out on that last week. And it just, for me, it was a confirmation. Like, you guys see the what it all implies, the implications. It's that, I'm very unpopular. I'm probably I kind of think I'm probably the most unpopular person in this whole millennial kingdom mud flood discussion because I believe the Torah is true and it's eternal, that it has not been done away with. And I believe that the true saints, the resurrected saints, were keeping the Torah. And I believe you can make the connection right here with Numbers, that there was a Sukkot dance. And the other thing in there, if you notice, she put pilgrimage. That just man, I just was going crazy when I read that, because I have my whole other thing on what is the number one definition of the Dark Ages, guys, aside from the fact that everyone was apparently living in their own poop. The number one characteristic of the Dark Ages is the pilgrimage. People were taking pilgrimages everywhere. And I think, and that is the prophecy of those who do not go to Sukkot. There will be a curse, right? So we see Sukkot happening all through the Dark Ages. We see the dance of Sukkot all through the Dark Ages. That's just one, the glove fits. That's just one little couple pieces of the puzzle, right? But that has emerged. And I feel like a lot of this is being snubbed because people don't want to recognize, Noel, this might be true. This might be true that they were actually keeping the Torah in the millennial kingdom. Yah forbid that they were actually obedient to his instructions in righteous living, right? Not worldly living, not lawlessness, but actual righteous living. So let's get into it. Numbers chapter 30 tonight. I can't believe we're already 45. I've been having fun tonight. I hope you guys are having fun too. but I'm just going to do a straight. Well, uh, I'll be giving some commentary along the way. If a man should vow a vow unto Yahuwah, the ever living, or perhaps swears an oath to bind his nafash, he shall not break his dabar. Dabar, like his word. He shall fashion like that which has gone forth from his mouth. And if a woman should vow a vow unto Yahuwah, the ever living, and has bound herself, placing a prohibition or obligation upon herself, while residing in her father's house in her youth, and her father hears and responds unto her vow and her bond of obligation which she has bound over her nefash, and her father has kept silence for her, then shall stand all her vows which she has bound over her nefash. But conditionally, should her father refuse her, in the day he hears any of her vows or the bonds of obligation which she has bound over her nefash, the vow shall not stand, and Yahuwah the ever living shall give pardon unto her, for her father has restrained her. There is an amazing picture that has just been formed here. Did you guys see it? I'm not willing or ready to tell you what it is yet. You're going to have to stay a little bit longer, but there's something very messianic that just happened. Amazing that when I finally saw this just this week, by the way, I'm like, this has changed my perception of what Messiah did. Now, I do want to give a quick story here, and I'll talk about my history for those of you who don't know. I married my high school sweetheart. She was a cadet, which is, if you don't know what that is, it's pretty much cheerleader. I remember she was, I met her, I was 16. She was 15 when I met her. And I remember the moment she entered my life. First day of class, my junior year. And I was in, it was third grade chemistry. Biology. And it shows you what I know, because that was the only class in all of high school that I failed. But believe it or not, it was the only class I failed, the one I met my wife in. And I remember the moment she walked through the door, the bell rang, she made it in just in time. She was wearing her cadet outfit. And I remember just looking at her, and there was an immediate voice. I know now that voice was the Ruach HaKodesh. And the voice said, she said, be kind to her. She's of importance to you. Those were the exact words. I remember. I'll never forget it. And from that moment forward, I knew that she was a very special person. And I was actually afraid of her. Not like, I mean, obviously you're a teenager, right? Boys and girls are scared of each other. I mean, it's a terrifying time to be alive. But not in that sense, not like I was scared of girls, but I was, which I was, but I was, I had a kind of a fear of God of her. Like I knew like there was something very, very set apart about her that I had to treat her in a certain way, which I did. Long story short, let's fast forward. We got married young. I was 21. She was 19. And we eloped. We got married 3:30 in the morning, Las Vegas. We drove out to Las Vegas. Back then we were just so inundated in the whole system. I just wish I would have had the knowledge. Talk about knowledge that leads to lack of knowledge that leads to destruction. I wish I just had the knowledge and the spiritual authority in my self-authority in my life to say, you know what, I'm going to take you in as my woman, just like Yitzhak and Rivka. Same story, right? Just come into my teepee. You'll be my wife. I'll provide for you. I'll take care of you. Whatever. Drove out there and get married. No, we were planning for a long engagement, and we were planning not to get married till after college. The thing is that we were saving ourselves, and there was no reason to be in a dating relationship unless if we saw ourselves marrying that person. We both agreed we want to get married. We want to move towards getting married to be able to provide and start a family together, this kind of thing. And I want to be respectful to both of our parents. I don't want to disrespect any parent, but this is a case in point. I did not know that basically my wife's father was never in the picture. I mean, I never really met him that much. I never really talked to him. It was not really a big deal. And eventually he comes along and he's very, very much against us getting married. Now, years later, when I came over to the Torah, I started understanding the way Yah's law works. I became very self-conscious about this. And I started asking the question, did I sin in marrying her? And there was I got a discussion, an open discussion with other Torah people online, and they're like, "Have you read this chapter in Numbers, the one we're reading right now?" And I'm like, "I'll go read it." And I went and read it. We went back and discussed, and they said, "Okay, so give it." I had already gone over the situation, and my wife was uh, out on her own, not being supported by her family. She was working her own job. She had college she had to do on her own, everything she had to do on her own. She had been turned out already. And so when you're looking at this here, this is for all you fathers out there. When you have daughters, and you got to think about this, okay? Like if you're supporting your daughter, you are covering your daughter. That's one thing, right? But if you have turned her out into the world and she is living on her own, that you're not supporting her, she is no longer in her youth. She is free to make her own vows. If she does something you don't like, you can't just come along now and say, "Hey, I'm your father. I'm going to play my father." You can't do that. You've turned her out. It's the same thing here. We're going to read that women who are widows, they no longer have a husband. They are free to make their own decision. They can make their own vow before Yah. And you can't have the father saying, "Well, your husband is dead, and now I'm." It's like, no. She is free to make her own vow. And also the fact that if you hear and you don't say anything, you can't come back on it later. And this is so important, and we're going to get in this with Messiah. So all that to say is that I fully believe in my heart that Yah led us into that relationship. We were following his will. We both just knew. We just knew we were following his will. We were supposed to do that. And that's the whole reason I married her, because I'm like, I want to take care of her. Like she needs, we need to take care of each other, really. We need each other because she doesn't have, anything else. Yeah. And so she was free to make her own vow before Yah to do that. She had no father over her life as an authority at that time. So anyways, let's read I think I read this whole paragraph, so let's keep going. But conditionally, if she should exist living unto a man, and she has vowed an obligation over herself, or perhaps she has rashly uttered with her lips that she binds upon her nefash, and her man hears and responds in the day of his hearing, not like 3 months later when he's had time to think about it. Like you hear it, and you're like, nope, I'm sorry. We need to talk about this. I'm not agreeing to this. Maybe I'll hear you out, and maybe I'll have to think about it, but I'm not agreeing to this right now, right? But assuming that he heard it, it was like, okay. And then he talks, a week later. Oh no, I'm playing my dad card. No, you can't do that. Or the husband, same thing. And her man hears and responds in the day of his hearing, and he has kept himself quiet unto her. Then her vow shall stand. You can't take it back. And the bonds which she bound over her nefash shall stand, but conditionally, should her man in the day of his hearing make void or declines her vow, then he makes her vow which she has vowed void, and he shall bring to nothing that which she has rashly uttered with her lips, with which she has bound her nefash, and Yahuwah the ever-living shall give pardon unto her. So this is for you husbands out there, and for you fathers out there dealing with your daughters, your wives. Dads, be on guard with your daughters, right? And listen to what they're saying and doing, and say, you know what? Like, no, I don't agree to this. Yah holds us to our words. I will give some examples of this. He holds us to our words, including when we're slack with our words, and he'll call us to our words. But the vow of the widow and her that has been driven out, all that which she will bind over her nefash shall stand over her. So again, if a woman being driven out, okay, so now that says here divorced, but if in this, in the Middle East, it was probably pretty unthinkable that a young girl would ever be apart from her parents' house if she wasn't married, right? But we're talking liberation now, right? Women have been liberated. This is the culture we live in, and the baby boomer generation has done. Not that my generation, the Generation X or the millennials are any better, because each one slips, goes further down the slide. But the baby boomer generation was the generation that liberated women, and that has caused so much destruction. In fact, that was a generation that started rapidly divorcing, just mass divorce, because they were liberated. And they were the ones just just sending their daughters off. Yeah, just go live your life. They just gave them up. You can't take it back. You can argue about what's biblical, but it's like, no, you made the decision to let your daughter go. She is free to, don't get upset when she comes back pregnant. You let her go. You let her go live off some other guy. But the vow of a widow and her that has been driven out, okay. But conditionally, if in the house of her man, she has vowed, or perhaps she has bound a bond of obligation over her nefash with an oath, and her man heard, and he kept his silence toward her, and he did not void her vow, then every bond which she bound over her nefash shall stand. But conditionally, should her man declare them void on the day he has heard, all which goes out of her lips for her vow or for the bond upon her nefash shall not stand. Her man has made them void, and Yahuwah shall give pardon unto her. All her vows and all imprecations for submitting the nefash, her man may make valid, or her man may make void. And conditionally, should he hold his peace, keeping silent toward her, her man, day after day, he makes valid all her vows, or perhaps all her bonds with which are over her. He establishes them. So in your silence, you establish something. Isn't that interesting how really our words are very important? For he had kept silent toward her in the day he heard. But conditionally, if breaking them, he should make them void after he has heard, then he shall carry her guilt contracted by sinning. There are the statutes which Yahuwah the ever-living commanded Mashahah between a man for his covenant woman, between a father for his daughter, still in her youth, in her father's house. Interestingly, if I had to give a theme for tonight's Torah portions, it's vows. We haven't heard the last of vows. Vengeance against the Midianites, or the Midianite. And Yahuwah the ever-living declared toward Al-Mashahah to say, avenge the sons of Yasharel upon the Midianites, or the Midianite. Afterwards you will be gathered toward your people. And Mashahah set a word in order toward the people to declare, array yourself for battle, men unto the host, and they will exist against Midian, and avenging, you will exact the punishment of Yahuwah the ever-living upon Midian. Or Midian. So if you're confused, if you're just now coming into this discussion for whatever reason, this has been the conflict over the last 2 weeks of Balaam sinning in. He couldn't curse Israel, and he blessed Israel, which really upset the king who hired him. But he's like, okay, well, you know what? I'll just cause them to sin. So he brings in all these, temple prostitutes, these Midianite women, and we're going to see the result more of this tonight. To lead the men into very immoral sexual acts with them. Select 1,000 of each tribe for all the tribes of Yasharel. You shall send them out to the host. So they're going to go in now and they're going to wipe out the Midianites, the people who did this to them. And he chose from the thousands of Yasharel 1,000 of a tribe. 12,000 were equipped for war. And Mashahah sent them forth 1,000 for each tribe for the host with for Phinehas, again, or Phia Nukas, son of Eliezer, the priest, for the host, with the kudash implements and the silver trumpets for blowing the thura wa aha, or a battle cry, in his hand. And they waged war against Midian like that which Yahuwah the ever-living had commanded Mashahah. And they executed all the males. And they executed the kings of Midian beside the ones who were executed. And the names were Rechem, or Evi, Rechem, Zur, and Hur, and Reba, 5 kings of Midian. Now, I don't have the Aramaic Targum in this study in front of me, but I think it says that Zur, if I'm not mistaken, is actually Balak, if I'm not mistaken. 5 kings of Midian. And Balaam, son of Beor, they slew with the sword. Not going over that again. Covered that the last 3 weeks, but we know Eliezer. There was some flying involved. They went flying off and they killed each other. Or Eliezer took them down. And the sons of Yasharel led away captive women of Midian and their little ones and all their beasts and all of their flocks, and snatched away as spoils all their wealth. And all the cities wherein they dwelt and all their fortified encampments they burned with fire. And they took for themselves all the spoils and all the bounty in Adam and in beasts. Now, think about the situation that happens here. In the ancient world, maybe not amongst liberated women today, but anything over 50 years ago, 70 years ago, in all of human history, a woman's survival was usually based on having a man in your life to provide for you. And so if your men go to war and they're all slain, it doesn't go so well. Um, they when the victors are coming into the town, what the women are going to do is they're going to flaunt themselves. It's almost like the Americans when they went into Paris in World War II, and they were just shocked at what women were doing, just throwing themselves at them, just throwing themselves. They never experienced anything like that before. Seems to be the typical history of war. In fact, a quick story. My grandfather, he died back in 2008 or 9 or so. And as leading up to his death, he was a World War II generation. All both grandfathers and their brothers all fought in the war on all the different fronts and battles. And he decides he wants to write a memoir of his wartime experience, which has the whole family abuzz. We're all talking about this, and he's clapping away on the typewriter. He finally prints it out. He gives us each a copy, kind of crude writing, but, very ceremonial. And he gives it to us, and we're reading it just page turner. And we're because he had never talked about his war experience. That generation never did. And he went to Paris, and he also went down to the Rio, but no, not Rio. Whatever. I'm live. I can't even think about it. It's embarrassing because I've been to France. But he went down to the beaches. All right. And along the Mediterranean. And he just talked about the women the whole time. And we're like, yeah, thank you for your service, grandfather. You sound like the war was really bad, really horrible for you. The whole time he was just with women, the women just throwing themselves at him. And he didn't even fight any battles. Like other guys had to go fight the battles. And then he rides in afterwards. It's like, hey, war is so terrible. Anyways, so these women, so you see Israel, they're bringing back all the women now, right? The women are probably putting on makeup, and they're putting on their finest, seductive clothing. They're throwing themselves at the window. Take me as a wife. You can have me. Take all my things. Just take care of me. So they're bringing back all these women. Well, let's see what happens. And they brought toward Al-Mashahah and toward Eliezer, the priest, and toward the gathered assemblies of the sons of Yasharel. I was hoping one of you guys would write what I was talking about in there to cover me so I could say it. And toward, let's see, the captives and the bounty and the spoils toward the encampment in the dry, arid regions of Moab, which are over against the Yarden near, it's Jericho, but Jericho. So they're in that plain region right there on the other side of Jordan, right when you cross over, and of course Jericho is right there. And Mashahah and Eliezer, the priest, and all the lifted up chiefs went out to meet them outside the encampment as they're coming back from war to see what they bring back with them. And Mashahah broke forth with anger against those in charge of the host. Yeah, the French Riviera. Thank you, Rick. The French Riviera. It was at the tip of my tongue. Whatever. And Mashahah broke forth with anger against those in charge of the host, the commanders of thousands and the commanders of hundreds, the ones which had come from the battling host. And Mashahah spoke toward them. Have you kept them alive? All the women? All of them? Look, though these existed unto the sons of Yasharel through the counsel of Balaam to treacherously betray Yahuwah the ever-living over the matter of Phaer or Phinehas. And a plague existed against the gathered assemblies of Yahuwah, and now all males among the little ones and every woman who has intimately known a man by lying with a male kill. But all the children among the women which have not intimately known a male by lying down shall exist for you. So, so this is, this is one of those things, those passages in the Old Testament, the Torah. I shouldn't have said Old Testament. I'm sorry, guys. But in the Torah, people refer to as Old Testament, that they get really hot-headed about. They get really upset. This isn't my God. My God would never do this. Think about what's happening here in the logic. Like, he's straight up saying that Moshe and of course Yahuwah is like, dude, all those women, they just tried to cause you to sin. They were rebelling against the commands. They were rebelling against Yahuwah, and you're taking them in now. Like, no, like look at all these people in Israel that died because of what they did. They died because of this. There was this huge plague. Like, no, they deserve to die too. And so the how many of these women maybe also were pregnant with child, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, so the way they were able to weed this out, because I'm getting the picture, I don't know if you guys are, I'm getting the picture that these men sent their wives over. There was a lot of fighting men, soldiers, and they lent out their wives, said, hey, can you do us a favor? Can you over there sleep with that, because apparently that's going to put a curse on them. And which is really messed up, kind of a Sodom and Gomorrah kind of idea. They were laying with probably a lot of them married women. That's my take on this. So anyways, they're executed. They're done away with. And this is how Moshe is able to weed them out. Going, okay, well, obviously there's these virgins. And they obviously were not a part of that. And you have to ask the question, why not? Why were these women not a part of that? Was this something they chose not to do? Like, yeah, sorry, I'm actually saving myself for marriage. I'm not going to go do this. And y'all honored that. And you shall incline from outside the encampment 7 days, all who have killed a nephash and all those who have touched against the pierced through. You shall purify yourselves on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day, you and your captives, and all clothing and all implements of skin and all implements made of wood, you shall purify them. And Eleazar the priest declared toward the men of war which had gone into battle, this is the statute of the Torah which Yahweh the ever-living has commanded Mashaha. Surely all the gold and the silver and all the copper, the iron, the alloy, and the lead, all things which go through fire can be purified. Certainly in the water of impurity, he shall be purified from uncleanness. And that which cannot go through the fire, you shall cause to pass through water. And you shall wash your garments on the 7th day, and you shall be clean. And afterwards you may come toward the encampment. Kind of interesting to think about cleaning our just, our tools, our just everything, right? Gold, silver, everything either had to be passed through the fire or through the water. Really interesting thought. I mean, I talk all the time about, today, again, I took a shower before I came on, right? And I make sure whenever I come on with you guys, I do not drink any alcohol beforehand. I want to be clean of alcohol. I want to have my physical body clean. And when I'm cleansing myself off physically, I pray for the spirituality. I pray, for forgiveness of sin, whatever, that he would hear me, that he would hear my words. But I don't often talk about as well, but this talks about here, cleaning off material items. That is all important, that you don't want to have unclean just stuff in your house lying around. Think about that maybe when you, do we think about that? Like when we just buy things, and secondhand, I don't know, just do we just bring into our house? Could it be unclean? Do we not worry about what it contaminates? And this is, by the way, where without getting into the Talmud too much, when you look at Talmudic stuff, this is why you have kosher delis, because the Jews, they don't want to go mix in goyim places because they're like, well, okay, I might be eating kosher, but what did you cook on that sizzle, that pan? Like, what was sizzling on there? Was there pork on there? Was there unclean things on there? Because now it's on those utensils, and now it's getting on my food, and now I'm unclean. You see how that works? So something to just think about as we look into this. And Yahweh the ever-living spoke toward Al-Mashahah to declare, and you shall divide into 2 parts. I'm just reading your guys' comments here. And of course, give me your thoughts. I just threw something out there. I don't know. I don't have the solution to it. And we have Peter's vision, of course, which is, that man themselves are not unclean. And we're talking, when you look at the Epistle of Barnabas, that men are like animals. They're either like clean or unclean animals, and you don't want to be around vultures, and those are the murderers and the pickpockets, spiritually as well as physically, and so on and so forth. You don't want to be around the hyenas. You don't want to be around, you want to be around clean people. But just because they're goyim doesn't mean they're unclean, right? But does that do away with, cleanliness as well? No, I would say no. And you guys can discuss amongst yourselves how this works with the pots and the pans. And you shall raise a tribute unto Yahweh the ever-living from the men of war, those going forth unto the fighting. 1 nephash from 100 taken out from the Adam, and out of the herd, and out of the asses, and out of the flocks, from their divided half you shall take them, and shall give unto Eleazar the priest as a heave offering unto Yahweh the ever-living. And from the divided half, the sons of Yasharel, you shall take one portion from out of 50, out of Adam, and out of the herd, and out of the asses, and out of the flocks, from all beasts, and shall give them unto the Levites, or the Lawayam, which guard the station of the Mashkan dwelling place of Yahweh the ever-living. How exciting is that sentence right there? The Levites guard the station of the Mashkan dwelling place of Yahweh the ever-living. Like, what a man. I mean, that was obviously like the talk of the nation over the last couple of weeks. You know, some of you don't like politics, but the fact is, it's what's happening in the world. Is we just talked about the assassination attempt, whether it was stage hoax or really happened, whatever your conclusion is on that. But you have the Secret Service who clearly didn't do their job, right? They weren't guarding the person they were supposed to be guarding. They messed up, whether it was supposed to be that way or whatever your conclusions are. But that's what we are called to do, to be, to, like, if there's a sniper on the roof, if he's allowed to get up there, we screwed up, right? You put on the full armor of God, right? We need to be on guard, vigilant every day, and have that zealousness of Phinehas that he had, that Yahushua HaMashiach had. And Meshaha and Eleazar the priest fashioned just as Yahweh the ever-living had commanded unto Meshaha. And the bounty existed, the excess of the spoils which the men of war had seized, 600,000 and 70,000 and 5,000 sheep and of asses, 160,000. That's a lot of animals. And the Nephash of Adam, out of the women who had not intimately known a man by lying down with him, all the Nephash were 32,000. And that's a lot of women coming into the camp too, 32,000 women. And the divided half existed, those going forth in the host. From the sheep were numbered 300,000 and 30,000 and 7,000 and 500. And the tribute existed unto Yahweh the ever-living. Out of the sheep were 600, 5, and 70. And the cattle were 6 and 30,000. Then the tribute for Yahweh the ever-living was 2 and 70. And the asses were 30,000 and 500. Then the tribute unto Yahweh the ever-living was 1 and 60. And the Nephash of Adam were 16,000. Therefore, the tribute unto Yahweh the ever-living was 2 and 30 Nephash. And Meshaha gave the tribute for a heave offering unto Yahweh the ever-living, unto Eleazar the priest, like that which Yahweh had commanded unto Meshaha. And from the divided half, the sons of Yasharel, which Meshaha had separated from the men, the ones from the host, and the divided half of the assembly existed from the sheep 300,000, 500, and the cattle were 6 and 30,000. Let's see if I can pour coffee and read at the same time without spilling all over my computer. That'd be really sad if I did that live. And asses were 30,000 and 500, and the Nephash of Adam were 16,000. And Meshaha took from the divided half of the sons of Yasharel the seized possession out of 50, out of Adam, and out of beasts, and he gave them unto the Levites, or the Lawayam, which guarded the station of the Mashkan dwelling place of Yahweh the ever-living, like that which Yahweh the ever-living had commanded unto Meshaha. And those in charge, which were over thousands, the commanders of thousands, and the commanders of 50, went toward Al-Meshaha, and they spoke toward Al-Meshaha. Your servants, which have lifted up the heads of the men of war who were under our hand, and there lacks not one man from among us. And we have brought near an offering unto Yahweh the ever-living from that which each man has acquired, implements of gold leg chains and bracelets, seal rings, earrings, and necklaces of globules, which are golden globes strung together to form a necklace. So there you go. There's your globe. There's your globe in the Bible right there. Globules. Don't let the Copernicans find out about that. To the face of Yahweh the ever-living, to make a covering atonement over our nefashah, which of course is the plural from nefash, or souls. To the face of Yahweh the ever-living. And Meshaha and Eleazar the priest took the gold from them, all fashioned from implements, and all the gold existed, an offering which they lifted up unto Yahweh the ever-living, 16,750 shekels from the commanders of the thousands and the commanders of hundreds, which the men of war had seized, each man for himself. And Mashaha and Eliezer the priest took the gold from the commanders of the thousands and the commanders of the hundreds, and he brought him toward the tent of meeting for a remembrance for the sons of Yasharel until the face of Yahuwah the ever living. All right, now I'm going to be reading off some names, and I know that these are hard for you guys to follow, but let's all be honest here that if I were to read them in English, they're still hard to follow. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter is there's a lot of begat chapters in the Bible. This one's not that bad, but there's quite a few here. So I'm going to try to give some of the, you can see I kind of highlight the yellow here to give bookmarks for me to read them off to you. And a great number of livestock. So the word vow is not used in the chapter, but it seems like the same concept is being put forward here. More of a let your yes be yes and no be no. And a great number of livestock existed for the sons of Reuben and for the sons of Gad, robust, strong, very numerous. And when they observed the land of Jazer or Yazer and the land of Gilead, that behold, the place was a place for livestock. And the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben went and spoke toward Al-Mashahah and toward Al-Eliezer the priest and toward the lifted up chiefs of the assembly to say, Ataroth and Dibon and Jazer and Nimrah, I'm reading you the English, and Heshbon and Elielel and Shibam and Nebo and Beon. So let me see if I can try this in the Paleo. Etar Reuth and Deabon and Yazar and Numarah and Chashaban and Elealaha. Actually, that's a really pretty name. And Shabam and Nabal and Bain. The land which Yahuwah the ever-living has smitten to the face of the gathered assemblies is a land for livestock. And I'll comment a little bit about this land afterwards. These your servants have livestock. And they declare conditionally, if we have attained favor in your eyes, give this land to your servants for possession. Let us not pass over the Yarden River. And Meshahah declared toward the sons of Gad and unto the sons of Reuben, shall your brothers go to war while you settle down to dwell in this place? So this is kind of like Moses is taking this as a kind of a slap in the face, right? He's like, we're about to cross over and go to war, and you're trying to claim your inheritance now. You know what happens when you claim your inheritance now, right? I mean, all of you parents out there, you know what happens. Like, let's say in your household, maybe they get TV time. I don't know what it is. Whatever it is that they get, and like they have to do chores first, right? Maybe they have 3 or 4 chores they got to do. They got to go out and milk the cow, or I don't know. I don't know what you do at your house. Take out the trash, do the dishes, feed the chickens, whatever. And you're like, okay, I'm going to let you do XYZ first before you do your chores. And they do it. And then they have no reason to motivation to want to go out and do those chores, and they don't do the chores. This is what Mashahah is getting at here. He's like, well, wait a second here. If you get the icing and the cherry on top now, what makes you think you're going to eat the cake? For what reason do you turn aside the heart of the sons of Yasharel from passing over into the land which Yahuwah the ever-living has given to them? Like this did your fathers fashion when I sent them forth from Kudash Baranuah to observe, or you can see right there, Kadesh Barnea. Not that it's any better in the English, really. To observe the land. When they ascended unto the valley of Ashakol and observed the land, they dissuaded the heart of the sons of Yasharel so as to not go toward the land which Yahuwah had given to them. And Yahuwah, the ever-living, burned with anger on that same day, and he swore. So it's kind of interesting that Moshe actually gets angry here, and he's actually in connection with Yah here, because sometimes Moshe gets angry. Sometimes Yah is angry, and Moshe is like, oh, dude, don't be angry. Don't be angry. Just don't destroy them all. And other times Moshe gets angry and Yah's like, you just fouled up. Like when he beat the rock a couple times with the stick. Here they seem to be on the same page. He burned with anger on the same day, and he swore to declare conditionally, since the men, the ones ascending from Mitzrayim, from sons aged 20 and higher, shall not observe the land which I swore unto Abraham and unto Yitzchak and unto Jacob, because they have not fully followed me, except Caleb, son of Kenizzite, the son of Yaphanuha the Kunuziah, and the other would be Yehoshua, son of Nun, for they fully followed Yahuwah, and Yahuwah's anger blazed up against Yasharel, and he caused them to vacillate, to move to and fro in the wilderness for 40 years. So this isn't saying that this is what he would do. He's already recounting this is what he did do, right? They've already wandered for 40 years. Until all the circuit of that generation that had fashioned evil in the eyes of Yahweh the ever-living had been consumed. And behold, you have risen up in the place of your fathers. So these are the sons that he was promising that, anyone, I think was it 20 or under, would be able to enter the land. You are the offspring of sinful men to increase again and again in the burning heat of Yahweh's anger toward Yasharel. For you do turn back from following after him, and he will again add rest unto them in the wilderness, and you shall bring destruction upon all this people. And they approached toward him and said, walls for small cattle we will build for our livestock here, and cities for our little ones. And we ourselves, we will draw out hastily, girded for battle, to the face of the sons of Yasharel, until that conditionally they be brought toward their standing place. And our little ones shall settle down to dwell in the fenced cities from the face of the inhabitants of the land. We will not turn back into our houses until every man of the sons of Yasharel shall receive his inheritance, for we will not inherit with them in the region beyond the Yarden or further, for our inheritance has come unto us in the region eastward of the Yarden. So they don't vow a vow here, but it's more like what Yahushua would later say, let your yes be yes and your no be no. It seems like it's a yes, like, yes, we're good for our word. We will cross over. We will leave the cities here. We will go over. We will fight your wars. We will get your land, but this is our land. We're already in our land. So why not just settle, And I think that if Moshe, or through the instructions of Yah, had said, you know what, no, do not settle on this land until we've taken it, I think they would have listened. They gave a request. And I think it was rationally spoken between adults. And Mashah had declared toward them conditionally, if you fashion this purpose plan, conditionally, if you will draw out girded for battle to wage war to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, and if you, all of you, arrayed for battle, cross over the Yarden to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, until he has disposed his dark enemies from before his face. Now, you saw I highlighted that there. I actually was asking Pamela, like, what does that mean? What his dark enemies? If she's under the impression it's kind of like, in her translation, it's maybe like a state of the soul. Just so if anyone out there, we're not talking about, at least I'm under the impression we're not talking about genetic people. We're just his dark enemies, kind of like shadows or things like that. Until he has disposed his dark enemies from before his face, and Ha'arat, or the earth, has been subdued to the face of Yahweh the ever-living. Then afterwards you shall turn back, and ye shall exist free from blame before Yahweh and before Yasharel. And this land shall exist for your possession to the face of Yahweh the ever-living. But conditionally, if you do not fashion like this, then behold, you have sinned, becoming liable to a forfeiture unto Yahweh. That's kind of a scary thought, that if you do not follow through with what you say, you have sinned, and you are liable to forfeit unto Yahweh. It's so important in our words. I'll be covering that before we close tonight. I got a lot more to cover. And he will acquire knowledge that your calamity, your iniquity, your guilt contracted by sinning shall find you. Establish for yourselves cities for your little ones, and walls for your small cattle, and fashion that which came forth from your mouth. And the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben declared toward Al-Mashah to say, your servants will fashion like that which Adoniah has commanded. Our little ones and our women and our livestock and all our beasts shall exist there in the cities of Gilead. And your servants will pass over, every man arrayed for battle, for the host, to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, unto warfare like that which Adoniah has purposed. And Mashah commanded of them with Eleazar the priest and Yahushua, son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the sons of Yasharel. And Mashah had declared toward them conditionally, if the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben pass over the Yarden with you, every man arrayed for battle to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, to your face, then you shall give to them the land of Gilead for possession, but conditionally, if they do not pass over arrayed for battle with you, then they shall have an inheritance in your midst in the land of Canaan. And conspicuously, the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben lifted up the voice to reply, saying, that plan which Yahweh has purposed unto your servants, in that manner we will fashion, and we will pass over arrayed for battle to the face of Yahweh the ever-living, into the Arat, or the earth of Canaan, and the inheritance which is ours is from the region beyond Ha-Yarden. And Mashahah gave to them the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben, and to the half tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph, from the kingdom of Sayakhan Malak of the Amariah, and from the kingdom of Og or Ag, Malak of the Bashan, of the land of the cities along the borders, the cities of the land, and circuit round about. Why did I highlight this? Because I want to be talking about this tonight. They're talking about the land division going to Manasseh of Og of Bashan. I have some really interesting information to give on that. Go off into some really crazy mud-fled territory tonight. I hope you enjoy it. And the sons of Gad restored Daban and Itarath and let me just look at these in English over here. Gad built Dibon and Ataroth and Eror. It's not any better in English. And Atroth and Shofan and Jazar and Jog Biha. And you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I'm just going to read this in the Paleo. It's not as bad as people make out. And Yagabahaha and Bayath Numar Reha and Bayath Haran, fortified cities and walls for the sheep. And the sons of Reuben restored Heshbon and Ililah and Kirjath or Kiryathuyam and Nabu and Baal and Maun, their names being changed, and Shabamaha. And he called out their names. I just lost my place. And he called out their names something or other of the cities which they had restored. And the sons of Mechar, the sons of Manasseh, walked to the place of Gilead and took possession of her and disposed the Amariah who were in her. And Mashahah gave the Galeed unto Mechar. That would be the rocky region unto Mechar, son of Manasseh. So that's kind of interesting because they call it the rocky region. What I'm going to be reading from tonight, talking about Bashan, it's referred to as the rocky region, very, very rocky. So that's interesting that Pamela translated that way. And he settled down to dwell in her, and Yair, son of Manasseh, walked and took possession of the villages, and he called them Chouth Yair. And Nubak walked and took possession of Kunuth and her villages, and he called out to her Nubak after his own name. All right, that was it. Wow, that concludes the reading of the word this week. Thank you all for being here. Good night, everybody. Just kidding. No, I'm going to be here for a lot more. Let's talk about vows. As I said, this was the theme of the night. You see here, Numbers 30, if a man vow a vow unto Yahuwah or swear an oath to bind his soul with a bond, he shall not break his word. He shall do according to all that proceedeth out of his mouth. Guys, like whatever, like fools speak a lot. Hopefully that doesn't describe me because I talk up here a lot, like I'm talking for 2 hours, right? But wise men know to keep quiet, and they know when to speak and not speak, and to there was a incident this last week, and we don't know if it's fake or not, but Sheila Jackson, the Democrat, was it House of Representatives? She might have been a senator. I know she was tweeting during Trump's speech at the RNC some very nasty things, but she there's one that went around where she said, "I would rather die than have to listen to the speech." She died within like 12 hours. She was dead. So I don't know. I have that in my paper that I published this last week, the Trump paper. And I even commented there, we don't know if this is legit or not, if they scrubbed it. But the thing is if so, then those are famous last words. It's irony, right? If she truly said that I'd rather die, well, what flows out of our heart, I guess, right? And what we say matters. Well, I'm not going through the stone of scone again. I've covered that before, but we see here with the stone of scone situation, the Yaakov's pillow, as it's known, the 12 stones that came together into one. And it says here, Yaakov vowed a vow saying, if Allahayam will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on, so that I come again to my father's house in Shalom, then shall Yahweh be my Allahayam. And this stone which I have set for a pillar shall be Allahayam's house. And of all that thou shalt give me, I will surely give the 10th unto thee. So you can trace this pillar, the stone, that the thought is, and I can't prove it, but I think it's a very good thought, and it's a probable thought, that when Paul talks about the stone that went through the wilderness that fed them the water and went with them, he said that stone was Mashiach. Really interesting. And is this the same stone that is in Westminster Abbey? Now, it would be to my horror for people to hear me talking about this and state that I believe in British Israel, that I'm saying Britain, God save the Queen. I guess it's the King now, right? That they are, the heirs of Israel. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that. In fact, I do believe that there is a physicality to Israel, and I think that Israel is all over the earth, and more than likely we are genetic Israel. More than likely we are physical Israel. But I am of the opinion more than anything else that it is Israel's spiritual. You guys will recall my people say that all the time. Oh, Israel's spiritual. And I did that study on Yitzhak literally being a divine intervention. His mother Sarah was not a virgin that we can prove, but claimed that he came from Yah, like an immaculate type of conception. And that was like people stopped listening to me after that. They're like, I can't, you're melting my brain. I can't handle this. I don't like what I'm hearing. A lot of people base their understanding of truth on their feelings, and they tuned out. But for me, that made a lot of sense. That spirit, like Abraham had a fleshly son and a spiritual son, and the spiritual son is who we are related to. And when Yahushua later said to the Jews, yeah, sure, you're related to Abraham, but I could have these rocks cry out, type of thing. Like he could raise up the sons of Yitzhak through anybody, right? It's a spiritual. There is something biological to it, but I believe that truly saved it's spiritual. Father Abraham, he's our spiritual father. If he's our physical father through Ishmael, then that doesn't mean that we're going to make it into eternity, right? He has to be a spiritual father. All right. So we see what he vowed here. Now let's look at what it says in Ecclesiastes chapter 5. When thou vowest a vow unto Allah Hayam, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. Better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. So remember what we just read in Numbers. He's like, if you do not follow through with what you just said you were going to do, you're forfeit. Like it would be better that you never said this and you never made this deal than if you break it. And of course, my understanding is that they followed through, but maybe we'll have to look more at Joshua with that. I'm pretty sure they followed through. Deuteronomy chapter 23. When thou shalt vow a vow unto Yahweh thy Elohim, thou shalt not slack to pay it. For Yahweh thy Elohim will surely require it of thee, and it would be sin in thee. But if thou shalt forbear to vow, it shall be no sin in thee. So this goes back again to the father, the daughter, the wife, that kind of stuff, right? Just, sometimes it's better just not to make it. There's nothing wrong with making a vow, but if you're going to make a vow, follow through with it. All right, so here's a great example right here. This poor, talking about the carol. Here we got a tie-in right here with the carol. I mean, does this look like a carol to you? I think she's dancing a carol. But this is the guy named Jephthah. I can't even pronounce it. We don't even know the name of his daughter, just his daughter. This is what it says. And Jephthah vowed a vow unto Yahweh. There it is. He vowed a vow. What's going to happen? And said, if thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into my hands, then it shall be that whatsoever, not whosoever, whatsoever, it could have been, okay, that whatsoever cometh forth of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be Yahweh's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. This guy was like clearly not thinking. I mean, he notice here he said whatsoever. So it could be he was thinking in his mind it could be an ant, it could be a bird or whatever, but cometh forth from his house, not into his house. So why is this creature in his house? But whatever. Look what happens. And as he passed over, okay, so you go down. He comes back. The battle's a success. Verse 34, and he came to Mizpah unto his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances. Was it a carol? And she was his only child. Beside her, he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass when he saw her that he rent his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter, thou hast brought me very low. And thou art one of them that trouble me, for I have opened my mouth unto Yahweh, and I cannot go back. So this is a tragic story. I mean, it's sad. He had to put his daughter down. He had to slay her. So you have all this artwork. You see him returning home, and there she is. So, I mean, it's sad, but she's coming out greeting him like this. That's not a very good picture because it's like, well, wait a second here. Like, what if one of the other girls came out first? But whatever. So, guys, what you vow when you say something to Yah, it's serious, guys. Everything that comes out of your mouth, and he felt he had to fall through with it. It's a tragic story. Proverbs chapter 10 says, He that hideth hatred with lying lips, and he that uttereth a slander is a fool. In the multitude of words there wanteth not sin, but he that refraineth his lips is wise. The tongue of the just is as a choice silver, the heart of the wicked is a little worth. The lips of the righteous feed many, but fools die for want of wisdom. So you're basically saying, like, you're going to get in a lot less trouble in life if you just keep your mouth shut, because when you say things, you might say something heated, whatever, you kind of have to follow through with it, right? We talk all the time how about we speak threats, and, we're just like, dissing people or whatever, you're smack talking, but like, that's not the biblical attitude. It's like, what you reap is what you sow, what you say you follow through with. And this is what Yahushua HaMashiach says on Vows. So I'm going to say really quickly that a lot of people will say that he's criticizing the Torah. I don't believe that to be the case. I'll explain what is going on here. But he says, again, ye have heard that it has been said by them of old time, thou shalt not forswear thyself, but shalt perform unto Yahweh thine oaths. But I say unto you, swear not at all, neither by heaven, for it is Elohim's throne, nor by the earth, for it is his footstool, neither by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. Neither shalt thou swear by thy head, because thou cannot make one hair white or black, but let your communication be yea, yea, nay, nay, for whatsoever is more than these cometh of evil. Now, again, people are saying he's criticizing the Torah here. I disagree with that. What this is more in line with is Isaiah chapter 1, where Yahweh is like, look, I'm sick of your feast and your new moons and your sacrifices and your Sabbaths, and the people who hate the Torah. See, we're not supposed to keep the fourth commandment anymore because he hates it. No, that's not what he's saying. He doesn't say he hates the Sabbath. He's saying he hates the way they're treating it. He's so sick of it that their sacrifices mean nothing. They're just going to do this to praise men and feel better about it. Like, they're not doing it as an act of worship, and he hates it. It's saying the same thing. He's like, and we're going to see in the next passage where it ties in with the Pharisee culture, because he's like, I would rather, instead of you thinking in terms of these vows that you're constantly doing, I would rather you just recognize in your heart that every time you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. Just follow through. You don't need to make these big lofty vows. Just have your yay be yay and your nay nay. It's how many people do you know in life that actually are like that, right? And like it matters. Like, you go, like, wow, like when that person says he's going to do something, he does it. So let's look in Matthew 15, where we're going to go further contextually into what's happening here. Then came to Yahusha's scribes and Pharisees, which were of Jerusalem, saying, why do the disciples transgress the tradition of the elders? For they wash not their hands when they eat bread. And I love this. So they're not talking about the Torah here. They're talking about the tradition, right? Like Fiddler on the Roof tradition, the Talmud. They're coming at him like, why are your disciples breaking our Talmud? And he doesn't even answer that question. He spins it around to say to the Torah. And he says, but he answered and said unto them, why do ye also transgress the commandments of Elohim by your tradition? For Elohim commanded, saying, honor thy father and mother. This would be the fifth commandment. Honor thy father and mother, and he that curseth father or mother, let him die the death. But ye say, whosoever shall say to his father or his mother, it is a gift, by whatsoever thou mightest be profited by me, and honor not his father or his mother, he shall be free. Thus have ye made the commandment of Allaham of non effect by your tradition, ye hypocrites. Well did Eliyahu or Elijah prophesy of you, saying, this people draweth, these people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth. I'm sorry, this should be, is this Isaiah, Yeshayahu, right? Whatever. This is a weird English translation there. This people draweth nigh unto me with their mouth and honoreth me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. But in vain they do worship me, teaching for doctrines the commandments of men. So he's prophesying that, they will break the traditions of the Torah. I shouldn't say tradition. They will break the commandments of Yah, the Torah, in order to create their own human traditions. And what they were doing was, my best understanding historically of what was happening is that the Pharisees would go and take their, call it tithing money, whatever money they had, they would give it offerings to Yah. And when they would do it, of course, big ceremony, look at me, drop all their loud coins in there, and they would get the praise of the men, and look how holy I am, giving to Yah. And then they would turn to their parents who were elderly and say, sorry, we don't have enough but we gave it all to Yah, so we don't have anything to take care of you. And their parents would suffer as a result, because they weren't really interested in getting they weren't interested in getting maybe the praise of their parents, or honoring their parents. They were just wanting the praise of men, and in doing so, they were actually snubbing Yah. They didn't care anything about Yahuwah. They're very Allahayam, who they claim to worship. They didn't care about him. They didn't want his praise. They didn't want his recognition. They wanted the recognition of men. And in this way, they were breaking the commands. And they were snubbing the very heart of Yahuwah, who every time I point this out week after week is caring for the widows, the orphans, the poor, the hungry, clothing, the naked, all this kind of stuff. They weren't doing that. And so let's look at maybe a contemporary example. Imagine for all the married men out there, you have a wife, and you're supposed to honor and love her as Mashiach loved the church, right? And so instead of saying, I'm going to go, I need to honor my God, so I'm going to go spend some time alone with him in prayer. And it's like, well, how about, doing the dishes, helping out around the house, things like that, right? Those little tiny things. And those are the kind of things that honor Yah, right? The things that he sees that nobody else sees, right? Or, going off to, your church prayer meeting or whatever, places where you get honored and maybe you're snubbing your family, those kind of things. Yah notices those things. Oh, okay, you don't really have my heart. You're interested in getting your praise, worship upon yourself. But in actually the things that nobody else sees is actually honoring me, I notice you're vacant over there. So yeah. Well, this, of course, is what it says in 1 Timothy 5:8. But if any provide not for his own, especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. I don't know what translation. I think that's the Berean infidel. You're an infidel. But you've denied the faith. That's a scary thought. And, in this ministry, I've all ministry leaders, we encounter them, individuals, as soon as, they find out that maybe you have some money that you can give them, ministry funds, they, start coming up and asking for it. And that's fine. We're all in need of money, right? Everybody needs it. My thing is that I'm like, well, you need to work for your family. That's just that's my number one requirement. Now, for those of you that I'm supporting a couple women here, Rebecca, and we're trying to implement Pamela into this. And they work very hard for Yah. They work very hard. They're not just sitting around. Like, there's no way. Like, they work so hard. They work harder than anybody I know. There have been guys who have starving families. We felt so bad for them, little babies, starving families, and we were trying to. I started slipping them money and stuff like that, and I find out they're blowing it on stuff. And I'm like, "Are you getting a job?" They're like, "No, you need to pay for us to get a house and all these kind of things, and then we'll get a job." I'm like, "No, I'm not paying for you to get a house. You need to get a job." And they refuse and refuse and refuse. And finally, I just say, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your children that they're going through this, but I'm not going to pay for this. You are not taking care of your family. You have no desire to. You just want free handouts. And they would start calling you names and this kind of stuff. This is what it says in Paul. Like if you refuse to take care of your household, you've denied the faith. Now, let's compare with Numbers 30 and Exodus 24 with Mashiach's crucifixion. This is what I said I was leaning towards. And if she vowed in her husband's house or bound her soul by a bond with an oath, and her husband heard it and held his peace at her and disallowed her not, then all her vows shall stand, and every bond wherewith she bound her soul shall stand. And then look at this in Exodus 24:3. I got so excited when I read this. And Moshe came and told the people all the words of Yahuwah and all the judgments. And all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which Yahuwah hath said, we will do. They have just given a vow. And Yahuwah was silent, meaning as the husband, he's like, okay, there's your vow. You can keep it. So then let's read what we see in Isaiah, Yeshayahu. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. He is brought as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before his shearers is dumb, so he opened not his mouth. Now, it finally hit me, and I'm thinking, well, what if this is the husband bearing the iniquity of his bride and suffering the punishment for her not fulfilling her vows? Now, we all know this, right? He came to get Israel, but Yahusha paid the price for his bride. He realized that she gave a vow that she didn't keep, and he couldn't, take it back and be like, he had to follow through because he was silent as the husband and allowed her to keep that vow. And so now he had to follow through with it. He had to take the responsibility for his wife or daughter in this situation. They screwed up. He has to follow through. He is responsible for this. This is why he didn't open his mouth. So I'm connecting that there with Numbers we read tonight. And that for me has kind of really changed the meaning, the perspective, because we always talk about the lamb being led to the slaughter, and not giving a defense. And we're like, should we do that? Should we not give defense? But this, if you look at it in the context of a husband with his wife, you're like, okay, I see what's going on here. 1 Peter 2:23 says, when they hurled their insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. And of course, we could bring in the cup of jealousy into that as well. All right, what are we on to next? Oh, division of the land. I want to look at this map real quick, and then we're going to turn over to Og with the time we have left tonight. And you could see the division over here. So what we were talking about tonight with Gad and Reuben, they're over here on the other side of the Jordan. You can see the blue line right there leading down to the Dead Sea. That's the Jordan. And so they're in this plain right over here, right across from Jericho. And they get this is what they asked for. This is their land division, right? And if you look at Manasseh right here, we saw that Manasseh, they got the land of Og, the land of Bashan. See how it comes the orange way out over here? And then you look on this map over here, there's Bashan right there. You can see Mount Hermon right up here on top, huge mountain range up there. So let's talk about cities and inheritance. Let's first talk about abandoned cities. Now, and this is all going to tie into Manasseh's inheritance and Bashan and what was going on post-mud flood. So you've probably seen a lot of people talking about this photo, not just me. It's a phenomenal panorama. And you can blow this up. You can go find it, the San Francisco panorama, and just blow it up and just look at the fine details. It's a very, very fine picture. But what people started noticing is that you have this huge San Francisco city, and there's like no people. The streets are almost completely empty. And you can even see on the shadows here, it's it's maybe like 10 o'clock in the morning. I mean, it could be 2 in the afternoon. You can kind of tell by the shadows there. The sun's not directly overhead, but it's at a fair angle high above. This isn't early morning. And where are the people, right? San Francisco, empty. Now, there are a few people. You look around and you will see some, but this should be bustling. All right, they didn't have cars; they had the trolleys, there's the tracks, but people should be walking around. People didn't have cars back then; they would have had horses. There are a couple horses standing around in this whole panorama, but not many. And then, so the question has been asked, did this photographer, which is an interesting man in of himself, was he brought in to document this city after some event happened that we can only theorize at this point. Nobody really knows, but was there a mass vanishing, right? Well, this is what an actual populated city should look like. This is in Venice, Italy. I've been here. Look at this. This is a summer day in Venice. That's a lot of people walking around, right? Okay, this is a city and makes sense. There is an actual boom town in the 1800s. Now, when you see a Western, they don't even make them this crowded. You'll see a few people, a few extras walking around. But this is a boom town. Look at this, man. It almost makes me think like this is like some sort of, I don't know, like maybe like something else was going on that we haven't really evaluated yet. If they were like rounding people up into these camps or so, like the kind they have in China. But yeah, that's a lot of people on that street. A lot of people. I mean, and there's a lot of tents out there and stuff, but I mean, wow, that's a lot of people for a Western town. And then, of course, we see here this scene in the city. I mean, I don't know where this is, New York. I don't really know. But I mean, there's people, there's practically children popping out of the windows. I mean, there's just so many people we see, look at all the fruit stands, the food stands on the street. It is a public market on the street, up and down. This is what city life used to be like. You just walk down the street and get fruit along the street. They didn't have the supermarkets back then. Just farmers would just go up and park, and there they are, just going up and down. And just, yeah, all right. But then, here's another one. It's another. You see children and people on bicycles and just basic. This looks like a populated city, about what you would expect. People walking up and down on any given day, morning, afternoon, evening, casually. All right. But then, here's another one. I'm just showing you, some cities the way they should be. 1800s, here, a lot of people walking up and down the street. Makes a lot of sense. What it should be. But then we go to more empty cities and we have these panoramas. Now, I will point out that one of the big criticisms with these photos, I used to be a professional photographer, so I totally get it. I used to really love, when digital first came out, I used to really be into the long exposure where I would, even in the daylight, you set the aperture and everything, and you can get these long exposures and people would look like ghosts. They would kind of bleed out a little bit. So I know what people are talking about when they're saying that that's what's happening here. You do see, you can look here, you can see looks like there's a little bit of people here and there. But for the most part in these panoramas, it is empty. It's empty. You should even be seeing the blurs. Like here's a little bit of a blur right here. You could see there's a wagon going by right there, or a carriage. Again, you just go city after city, and like this bridge is empty. Like these photographers are coming in. Here is in Moscow in Russia, just empty. You can even see the market right here. There's nobody at the market. Now here in this picture, again, it's very empty. You can see, if you look, you can see some streaks here. So long exposure. There are some carriages being spoken of or accounted for, but there's only a couple. It's very, very empty. This one has a little bit more people. But let's look at empty Paris real quick. Yeah, I mean, you should be, if this is a long exposure, you're going to, and you will see some in here. You're going to see a little bit of that ghostly behavior. But this is not what Paris looks like. I mean, Paris is bustling. It could be even shoulder to shoulder. There's just so many people everywhere. I can speak up for this. Here again, you see one carriage, but all this is empty. All this is empty. I think there's a little bit of the bleed over here. And it looks like there's a person right here, like a ghost. You can see a ghost right here. A person did move. Here's another one. So you can see right here, there's a ghost. Here, here. So there are some people. There are some people. I think there might be a person moved. This one here, I purposely put this one in. You could totally see there's people. You see all that? That's what you should be seeing with the long exposure. You see that all the time. You should just, this is probably like 12, like several people moving around, maybe a little markets right there. And more of it, more empty streets. Oh, this one really tripped me out. Like this one is like, no, this is like the busiest intersection. I my wife will remember the scariest, I think, moment of driving anywhere in all of Europe was driving around this arc. It was like I got around that thing and I'm like, how in the world did I not get in an accident? I should have gotten in probably 12 accidents. And I don't know how there's not accidents all day long. It is the scariest traffic circle I have ever driven around in my entire life. In fact, I don't think I ever want to drive that again. I'd rather walk it. All right. So you guys get the picture. You guys have seen the research. You've seen the claims that there appear to have been some point in the 1800s just these massive empty cities. Well, let's get past all these pictures. There's so many of them. And these, I'm still in Paris. Okay. Of course, this is a Versailles. This is easy to explain. I've been to Versailles. All they have to do is you just have to be the first person through the ticket booth in the morning. You just run out there and you can get the gardens by yourself. So that's not a big deal. But all right, let's talk about the abandoned cities of Bashan. Now, I have it in the store. Oh man, I didn't bring it. I wanted to hold it up for you guys. We actually sell this. This is a edition that Rebecca edited. There's just gems all through this book. And this guy, a reverend, he sent over there in the 1800s to just to scout out the lay of the land. Now, I know what a lot of you are thinking. I went down the whole route for myself that, Israel isn't the real historical Israel, and, and the Freemasons and the Mormons and, all that kind of stuff. And they just went there and they made it up. Actually, I'm looking at it from a very, very different perspective now. We have the mud flood, we have the end of the kingdom, and of course, Israel was forsaken through that time. It was a wilderness, a wasteland that's prophesied. It's interesting that, there was some sort of consciousness in the 1800s where people were coming out on the other end, and they're like, they have their history books which talk about how there was endless wars there and the Muslims were there and the Crusaders. And it's like, well, why didn't they build up cities? Where's the cities? There was nothing there, guys. It was just wasteland. There was nothing there. So were they going and bleeding in the sand? Like, why were they there? And what I'm saying is that they have these probably fictional history, and they're now coming into this going, oh, we need to go claim the land. There was nobody there to claim it. Nobody. Well, this is what he says. He says the ancient cities and even the villages of Western Palestine have been almost annihilated, with the exception of Jerusalem, Hebron, and 2 or 3 others. Now, I've given in my research showing even prophecies that Jerusalem would be rebuilt after 70 AD. I've shown that. It's in books, ancient books. Believe it or don't, I do. And that Hadrian did rebuild it. That's the city we see today. It was rebuilt. So when the mud flood happens and everybody woke up and came on the other end, the inheritors came in and stuff like that, yes, Jerusalem was sitting there like a flea market in the desert. In some cases, we can scarcely discover the exact spot where a noted city stood. So complete has been the desolation. Even in Jerusalem itself, only very few vestiges of the ancient buildings remain. So he's saying that he's going and scouting the whole land of Israel. He's like, guys, it is just, there's nothing there. Like, it has been completely. Now, since that time, there's been magnificent finds, Nineveh, Jericho, that kind of stuff. He's saying at this time that Jericho has disappeared. He says it right here. But let's keep reading. The state of Bashan, I showed you on the map where it is what Manasseh got. The state of Bashan is totally different. It is literally crowded with towns and large villages, but it gets really trippy. And though the vast majority of them are deserted, they are not ruined. Say, what? I have more than once entered a deserted city in the evening, taken possession of a comfortable house, and spent the night in peace. Many of the houses in ancient cities of Bashan are perfect, as if only furnished yesterday. What? Oh, finished. Not furnished, but finished. Finished yesterday. The walls are sound, the roofs unbroken, the doors and even the window shutters in their places. Now, this guy doesn't know what to make of this. He goes on account after account after account after account of going through all these abandoned cities, just completely abandoned. And he's in his mind going, oh, Og built these. Now, maybe he did, but he's like, Og built these, and he built them so good that they've lasted thousands of years, but nobody's inhabiting them. But we have a record in writing. The guy is, for whatever reason, this and it's scrubbed. A lot of the other stuff did. We have, for whatever reason, this one broke through, and we have a guy stating that he saw city after city abandoned. So let's see more of what he says. The houses of Bashan are not ordinary houses. Their walls are from 5 to 8 feet thick, built of large squared blocks of basalt. The roofs are formed of slabs of the same material, hewn like planks and reaching from wall to wall. The very doors and window shutters are of stone hung from pivots projecting above and below. Some of these ancient cities have from 200 to 500 houses still perfect. Up to 500 houses just sitting there perfect, as if they were lived in yesterday, but nobody lives there now, but not a man to dwell in them. On one occasion, from the battlements of the castle of Salka, I counted some 30 towns and villages dotting the surface of the vast plain, many of them almost as perfect as when they were built. And yet for more than 5 centuries, there has not been a single inhabitant in one of them. Well, that's kind of interesting, because you guys know my timeline, right? The Millennial Kingdom came to an end around 1500-ish, and this is about 450 years later. Kind of interesting. 350 years, I guess. Excuse me. But he's estimating about 5 centuries have gone by. Some of these, so something happened. People vanished. They got up and left. So here's a story here. Now I have lack of time, so I'm going to try to skim through this. You guys know how it is at the end of every episode. He has an Arabian tour guide, and he's pulling up, he's tired. He's like, a house, is there a house here? And the guy says, there's hundreds of them. This is the town of Barak. Hundreds of houses. Just go pick one out. Go sleep in whatever you want. Go take the palace. No one's living there. The house seemed to have undergone little change from the time its old master had left it. The walls were perfect, nearly 5 feet thick, built of large blocks of hewn stone without lime or cement of any kind. The roof was formed of large slabs of the same black basalt, lying as regularly and jointed as closely as if the workman had only just completed them. They measured 12 feet in length, 18 inches in breadth, and 6 inches in thickness. He's amazed because he's already coming out. This is a guy coming out saying, how did they build this? How in the world, who built this thing? And he's just guessing, well, it must have been Og. It must have been the giants. Maybe it was. Maybe it lasted thousands and thousands of years. But this could be the inhabitants, a different type of inhabitants, right? For whatever reason, there was a judgment event. Maybe many of these cities were destroyed, but others just got up and left, and the houses remain. And it gets even more interesting. In another city of Bath and Nea. Now, in this book, guys, if you guys go get the book, he goes on and on and on the descriptions. It's really fascinating. He said, a wide street lay before us, the pavement perfect. The houses on each side of this wide, perfect road, standing, streets and lanes branching off to the right and left. There was something inexpressibly mournful in riding along that silent street and looking in through half-open doors to one after another those desolate houses with the rank grass and weeds in their courts and the brambles growing in festoons over the doorways and branches of trees shooting through the gaping rents in the old walls. The ring of our horses' feet on the pavement awakened the echoes of the city and the startled many a strange tenant. And he talks about the foxes and the owls and that kind of stuff. Now, I live in the American South, and it's very common here to drive down, farm roads, and you just see abandoned houses. The thing is, though, they're everywhere. The thing is about these abandoned houses is they're not built very well, and the roofs will collapse in, and the windows are broken, and it just the floors fall in, and the weeds, right? The weeds grow up really quickly. The vines, it takes over very, very quickly. Not so here. He's talking about the roof, the ceilings, the roof, everything is still perfect. You could just move into these. So this isn't like modern construction. This is old world construction that he is noticing here. Now, something happened since he wrote this, because I was trying to look in for photographs, proof of this. You can't find it. At least if they're out there, I haven't seen them. So it appears to me like maybe there were wars, something that happened that someone came in and totaled all this, just like the World Fairs, right? Someone came in and destroyed all this, but he was there as a witness to see this. He says, one of the houses in which I rested for a time might almost be termed a palace. He just walked into a town and he took a palace. It's like, yeah, no one's like, I'll take it. He didn't decide to live there. I would be like, yeah, does it have a pool in the back? I'll live here. Shoot, I'll live here. A spacious gateway with massive folding doors of stone. The massive front doors, they were stone, like the kind you kind of maybe open up. They opened from the street into a larger court. On the left was a square tower some 40 feet in height. Round the court and opening into it were the apartments, all in perfect preservation, and yet the place does not seem to have been inhabited for centuries. I did not see a solitary trace. This is really interesting. I did not see a solitary trace of Mohammedan occupation. Why is that important? Because I thought the Crusades happened. I thought Islam, the Mohammedans were there, and they're not. He was like, this is crazy. I'm just going through these cities. Nobody, not even the Islamists. We have the Christians, the Crusaders, and everything fighting over this. Nobody wants it. It's just free for it's just free for all. Just grabs. So that it has probably been deserted for at least 1,000 years. That's an interesting terminology he says there. Probably 1,000 years it's been deserted. He even talks about how in this one city, 34 ecclesiastical cities of Arabia were whose bishops were in the 5th century suffragans of the primate of Basra. So he's going into these places where he says on record were heavily Christian. There were churches, all this stuff, and they're all gone. Don't know where they went to, but they're just gone. No explanation. Just ghost town with no explanation. This is also a very old town and must at one time have contained at least 20,000 inhabitants. But then he comments, though now it has scarcely 20 families. So remember all those pictures I was showing you of Paris, London, different places. Again, you're seeing the same thing. It should have room for hundreds and hundreds, millions of inhabitants. And you see a fraction of that just kind of wandering around, right? He's seeing the same thing here. You're seeing this in real time. Having entered, we proceeded along a well-paved street. Okay, and he goes on talking about that. Let's jump to this. Here's another town called Kenneth, and he says, there are no traces of any lengthened Mohammedan occupation, for there is not a single mosque in the whole town. And you're like, wait, what? And this is, of course, in Syria. And I thought they were everywhere, right? Why did they never think to build a mosque there? That raises some eyebrows. He says, we had noticed a singular round tower and some heavy fragments of walls. The glen appears to have been anciently laid out as a park or pleasure ground. We found terrace walks and little fountains, now dry, and pedestals for statues, a miniature temple, and a rustic opera whose benches are hewn in the side of the cliff. This actually reminds me of in The Magician's Nephew, when Diggory and Jill, they go into that Tartarian city that's all abandoned, and they see the dry fountains and all this stuff. Seeing the same thing. He says that there's remains of a castle or palace. Moving on. He says, but never before had I looked on a scene which nature and art and destruction had so combined to adorn. From Akunawat, we saw 2 large deserted villages higher up on the mountains and a large deserted town below on the borders of the plain. Everywhere he's going, just deserted. Another town, and this is also Bashan, Suwada. We visited a Corinthian peristyle, a Roman gateway at the end of a straight street, nearly a mile in length and paved throughout, the ruins of a temple of the age of Trajan. This one, he's talking about more Roman ruins in this town. The remains of a very large church within whose crumbling walls is the modern Christian burying ground, a mosque, the roof of which was once supported on marble columns, doubtless riffled from an old church or a still older temple. Then we inspected the ruins of a fountain, of an opera, and of a large theater, and we saw 2 immense reservoirs anciently supplied by aqueducts which brought water from the neighboring mountains. Now, I can look up and find this information. I could find this. I could find where the old Roman ruins are. They will show you this. But I cannot, for the life of me, find where these cities were that were just abandoned. They were just ancient cities. I can't find any record on that anywhere else other than in this guy's writing. we walked on after our little guide, winding among vast heaps of ruins. Okay, so this is in the ruined town there. Let's keep reading. Basra. He says in Basra, he says, some of the buildings I saw there would grace the proudest capital of modern Europe. And you almost get the feeling that, yeah, that whatever happened, maybe there was a big war there, a Gog-Magog type war that happens there. And he even comments that the thing about Bashan is that it's at the crossroads of the East and the West, of Syria, Babylon. If you even go China, whatever, across the Euphrates, coming into Israel, wherever, it's right there. And this is where the wars would happen. So maybe there was a big destruction event. We don't really know, but he's saying this amazing architecture that would surpass even what you see in Europe. And this is the 1800s. And you're like, you gotta be kidding me. Because think about how much they've destroyed in Europe, even since the 1800s. Deserted cities. We had not gone more than 4 miles from Basra when an alarm was raised. The people of Basra had told us, and we had known ourselves, that though the country on our proposed route is thickly studded with towns and villages, yet not a single human being dwells in them. In the town of Salka, it has been long deserted, and yet, as nearly as I could estimate, 500 of its houses are still standing, and from 300 to 400 families might settle in it at any moment without laying a stone or expanding an hour's labor on repair. So he's saying that these houses are like just brand new. Just move right in. Nobody's there to move in. No less than 11 of the old cities which I saw from Salka, lying between Basra and Beth Gamol, were visited by Mr. Graham. Their ramparts, their houses, their streets, their gates and doors are nearly all perfect, and yet they are desolate without man. He can't figure this out. Now, these are just the 11 cities from the place Salka and somewhere else, but between Basra. But before, there were other cities. I mean, there were we're talking dozens of cities that he saw, and he can't put it together. And I think that in those photos, we don't know what was going through those people's minds. People were probably walking through those streets. Those photographers, they might have been the same thought, like, how in the world do we have these cities? And there's nobody here. And they're just photographing it. They can't even put it together. Nobody's figuring this out. Or that if they did, we don't know, because those writings did not survive. He says here in this town of Kerioth, its pavement in many places were perfect. What does it say in Argob? Most of them contain a few families of Druses, but not 1/10 of the habitable houses in them are inhabited. At Nedron, whose massive black walls and heavy square towers rise up lonely and desolate from the midst of the wilderness of rocks, the town has still a comparatively large population. That is, that there are probably 100 families settled in the old houses, which cover a space more than 2 miles in circumference. So here he's talking about a town that's 2 miles wide, but there's 100 families in it. So I think he's saying that that's the most he saw. Like on his whole journey, there was this one town with 100 families in it, and that impressed him. All right, well, that's it for tonight. And I'm thinking that's kind of a preview. Maybe I'll make a independent investigative paper on that. Maybe I could dig up photographs. If anyone out there is still listening and you, if you can find some photos on Bashan from the 1800s, and if you could find evidence of the cities, I would love to find it. I was able to find some of the ruins he talked about. Yes, they will show you those. They will show you the ruins, but nothing perfectly preserved. Okay, and I forgot to mention at the beginning of this video, I feel terrible for missing it, is, guys, we're coming up on the end of the month. It is the 26th of July. Yah has always provided. I'm not worried. He's going to provide. But please, if Yah puts on your heart, please go and check out to see where we are with the Ministering Widows Fund. We have, by the time we get to next Sabbath, it'll be a new month. If we can make our goals this month, anything above that is going to go to Pamela. Pamela is translating the paleo. She needs our help. She needs financial help. And I want to be there for her. I have been hoping that some individuals will come to me and say, Noel, we want to put this burden on us to take care. We want to, as a ministry, lift her up and take care of her, right? I don't want to just throw her at you guys, say, okay, now you guys take care of her. We need to come to that decision as a collective community, and I want to hear it from you guys. And I haven't yet. But last month, you guys really poured out your heart, and she got a really nice package deal. So anything, again, we meet our goals this month. We're coming up. We got less than a week, running out of time. We meet our goals. Anything above that, hand off to Pamela. And I love her. I love all that she's done for us. All these translations. She has so much more coming. I can't wait. The next study we're going to do after Deuteronomy is Song of Songs. Looking forward to that. Out of the Paleo Hebrew, of course. Everyone have a restful Sabbath. Enjoy your Sabbath day. Read, pray, spend time with your families, eat good food. We'll do this again next week. Love you guys. Thank you for being here with me.